Hello, beautiful, and welcome to the podcast where we're moving the conversation forward about the choices you make in your daily life. I'm your host, Monica Cox, and I'm here right alongside of you, learning, growing, observing, and trying to make better choices consciously and subconsciously. Together, we're going to become better versions of ourselves and have raw, honest, open conversations about the things that truly affect our lives. And maybe, just maybe, finally get to a place where everyone else's BS doesn't trigger us. I think it's crazy that you have this world that you go into the ER and it's just like real world, right? There's part of me that just doesn't even participate in normal society. I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, I live a really sheltered life, even though I travel and I do things and I see people, but I don't really participate in normal society at all.
I was just talking to my youngest brother about that. I was like, me and my family, like my immediate family, my mom, my brothers, if we could go and live in like an ashram somewhere, just monk it, just become a monk, we would do really well.
You
We would.
would?
Yeah, because I shouldn't say we don't have the capacity for nonsense. It's just, I'll say it like this. Somebody has time for it. It's not us.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
So
I can see that. But I mean,
mm,
this goes kind of like what we were texting the other day about that clip and how that guy says that the way that the universe is expanding and speed of light and all this kind of stuff, right? He says that we as a planet aren't going to be able to see other universes or solar systems. And you were like, well, what's the impact of not being able to see quote unquote others? And I was
yeah,
like, well, who else is looking? Because I don't think most people, one, even believe that's true, right? They're so
yeah,
insular in their Earth is the only thing out there. And two, does
mhm,
it matter?
right,
Even
right,
though scientifically community is the number one thing for health, and us humans thrive on community,
mhm, mhm.
would have we shifted so much that, because for me, we're both from really big families,
Mhm. Yeah,
and
yeah. My mom's
unf
one of 15 and my dad's one of 6, or was one of 6.
yeah,
So yeah.
yeah, same. My mom's one of, well, there's a lot of brothers, stepbrothers and sisters. We're not even gonna get into that. Yeah, a lot, right? They're over 10. Both sides of my family have over 10 brothers and sisters. But with that comes a lot of challenges and different personalities, and I'll just be really blunt, toxic, like
Yes,
pure toxicity.
100%.
And I think the generations before just put up with it. That was just normal. Where
Mhm.
now I'm like, I feel like being alone is more satisfying than being part of a community that doesn't lift you up. And it's not in a
Yeah,
judgment way. It's just in a I don't want to walk away from community and feel drained and be like, oh, but I have community.
yes. Yeah. I feel like that saying, blood is thicker than water, holds no weight anymore for those of us that realize that it really shouldn't hold weight, I
Yeah.
guess, is the way I would put it. That for me, it's not my soul made a choice to come in here to with this particular family, with this particular bloodline. And that's wonderful and amazing in that I knew that there was certain things that I needed from that line. But once I'm here and I'm awakened and I'm conscious of what it is that my purpose is, my mission is, and wanting to lead in that, and that I want to be consciously aware, what comes with that awareness is that actually the family that I choose, it's the
Mm-hmm.
tribe that I cultivate that is really truly going to allow me to be my best self. And it's one of the things that has been like a really significant heartbreak for me recently, is realizing that I went through a few years ago a huge cutting out of my life. Like, I went and dropped people, mostly family, that no longer served me. And it wasn't out of malice or ill intent. It wasn't because I was sitting thinking, oh, I'm better than you. It was simply when I looked at the things that I considered my boundaries, when I looked and considered what was healthy for me physically, emotionally, spiritually, the whole nine yards, the people that were in my life were not helpful. They weren't helpful for me, and they didn't want me to push them or help them along in their consciousness journey. Where they were, they didn't need nor want me to help or be any sort of influence. And because there wasn't it wasn't, I always think it's a two-way street. If I can help you and you can help me, and because both of those paths were busted, I was like, I gotta walk away. And understanding that the day that you turn around and you want to be a part of my life, and you want, to have some sort of really amazing conscious exchange, I will open the door for you. But right now, this isn't it. And now that is coming back around. And I know that's because I'm elevating, and my consciousness is going through an up level again. And so there's been this new segment of my life where I'm like, yeah, gotta go. Like, I gotta go. Gotta go. I I'm equally not helpful. It's not good. And but now I can do that leaving with a lot more grace, a lot more compassion. I can do it with laughter. I can feel good inside of the sadness of it, inside of the having to walk away. And
Yeah.
that, I think, is something that most people like do not understand. And so when we think, to go back to your point of this clip, right? I look at it and be like, I can say, well, if it's just me now, right? Do I allow myself to attain the highest level that I can achieve, or do I allow myself to get stuck in this like really egoic, I am the only one,
Yeah. Yeah.
sadness,
Yeah.
grossness? And that's just on a microcosm. Obviously, that like clip can also be taken in the macro too, which is, I think, a whole different conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many layers to surrendering to your progress,
Hmm.
right? And navigating what that looks like with relationships to other humans. And I have, from personal life and social media life, right? Because people just love to come at you when they don't know you. Like, oh, you're going to be alone if you cut everyone out, right? I have this clip of like, I don't know, something like, I'm not dealing with anyone else's bullshit anymore. Like, goodbye, right? The person was just like, you're going to die alone. And I was like, well, maybe that's better. Like, maybe me dying alone and not having to
Yeah.
deal with everyone else's bullshit that they don't want to deal with is better. I'm not sure.
Hmm.
um, but it's an interesting thing, like you said, not to get into your own head and be, the ego being like, well, I'm alone. I think we had this conversation in our mastermind. because people are like, this is a lonely road. Well, does it have to be?
Mhm.
Are we going to
Right.
sit there and continue those narratives that, no one wants to elevate? They're all stuck in victim mode. I'm the only one doing it. Is that really true? Or are
Right.
you getting into a new type of victim mode because it's a safe place to
Right.
stay, but it's like you feel like it's this elevated consciousness of like, well, this is the truth now.
Right. Yeah. Y yeah, I remember that conversation, and I remember the thing that stuck with me was this idea that there was a price to pay
Mhm.
for being awakened, and that price was loneliness. And and the way that it was being said, I had to step back from it because I was like, when I brought it to the group, I remember like being very in it. And afterward being like, okay, just step back. Like you've now put it out, like you've out your feelings about it. Like, but now let's take a step back and try to like function through it, I guess. And I I remember re-listening to it and going, the way it's being said, like the tone of it is making it seem like there is in some way, shape, or form a bad thing about it. Like it was almost a negative connotation about it of like, here's the price that you pay. So basically get right with it and be okay with being alone, but find the okayness, find the even dare I say joy in being alone because at least then you're in this elevated state. And I realized that really the core of it, my problem with it was that negativity about it. That it was coming at it from this place this of negativity where I was like, yes, there is a price to pay and happily, like thankfully, you may find that your tribe is smaller
Mhm.
and that at times you may be alone. But that too shall pass, you know? I find that there are whole weeks where I don't talk to anybody that I would consider, quote, "my friends," and at one point that of my life, that would have made my life really, really sad. Like, I
Mhm.
was wrecked by the fact that, like, people were busy and had their own lives and that me one person didn't rank that week as like important in their lives. Now at 34 years old, I'm like, dude, it's y'all don't rank in mine, so how could I possibly be judgmental about the fact that my phone hasn't rung or beeped with a text message with people going, oh my god, I haven't heard from you, are you alive? Like
Mhm.
I can't be judgmental about that.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm sitting doing the things that are important for me. And those that doesn't always include reaching out and checking in. But that also just means that I have to be aware of the fact that my circle will be small. There aren't as many people surrounding me that are going to be okay with me not showing a high level of interest,
Mhm.
you know?
Do you think our ancestors dealt with this bullshit? Like, in the sense that you have to admit that community has massively changed in the last 40 years, right?
Mhm.
Even from my childhood to my kids' childhood. I mean, me and my husband have chosen to live a lifestyle that we don't live near family. Um, Part of that I think is on purpose. Other there's another part of me that is just like, that's just what happened. We obviously love going and visiting our families. We do it monthly. But it's radically changed. And so do you think there's an element of uh it's just hard. It's harder, right? We don't live how our ancestors lived because of, let's just say, technology. Let's just leave it
Yeah.
at that one. And we have to overthink about communication with our community, where before it was just like a normal day thing. Like if
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think back and like my energy is highly attuned, I would say, to a communal lifestyle. Like when
Mhm.
I think about where me and my family, my immediate family will be in 10, 15, 20 years, it is highly communal.
Yeah.
Like we're all living on the same piece of large property. We may have to drive to, or, get on a four-wheeler or a horse to like get, to the other person's house. But like we're within like the same, 600 acres. Um, and when I think about where that comes from, where that like joy or like wanting that to be comes from, I recognize that it comes from the space of my ancestors lived in a very highly communal thing. Like
Yeah.
I still have very strong ties to that sort of community and that bloodline and that sort of gathering. Um, but I also recognize that society want like the if we take the amorphic, the powers that be, the them, the capital them that like nobody knows who they
Knows who they
are.
are.
And like automatically when you say the them, they're automatically bad. They're automatically dark. They're automatically evil and they want to separate you and control you and all of that. Um, which I firmly believe is just like a figment of our imagination. Like
You do?
yeah, I think that there are definitely levels to, evil and, bad and like, people having that like term of like evil acts and all of that stuff, but it's so trivial to me in like my mind. Like I have to just be like it's just a figment of all of y'all's imagination and that's why it's real. Like
Yeah.
y'all are sitting saying that that the next person, who has more money, who has more influence, who has more power, who has more whatever you want to say, they automatically must be evil because they have it. When really, if you were in their spot, if you knew their life, would you still think that? Everybody has no problem. And granted, don't get me wrong, like on a personal level, like I think Trump is an asshat, but like, I mean, if I don't know the man, like
Yeah,
not
yeah.
personally. I've never
Yeah.
had a drink with him. I've
Yeah.
never sat down and had a meal. I don't know. No, if when I sat down with him, I would be like, I guess I can maybe see it from your side. I don't know. You know what I mean? So nowadays, I'm kind of like, from a community aspect, I can see the world trying to separate themselves because of this fear of the them.
I
And
and that's probably like all levels, right? When you come down to men, women, race, religion,
yeah,
money, wealth, and it is, I guess it just comes back to what you choose to believe about your situation. And yeah, it is this, it's all imagination, right? Like the
mm,
whole world is your imagination in your head and what you're coming up with. And it just coincides with um becoming real because like a lot of people believe it. And so you're in the
yeah.
society of this belief system. Yes, I get what you're saying there. And it's so weird to like even admit that because you just sound like a fucking freak. You're like,
Yes, right? And I hold it, and I'm good with it. I'm good with being like, yeah, I know I sound crazy. I sound like some people are even going to hear that and be like, she's spiritually bypassing. No, no. We can sit and have a 3-hour conversation about the nuances and how ultimately at the end of it, you're going to think that I'm either bipolar or schizophrenic because I've got way too many voices inside of my head with way too many opinions and way too many thoughts about it. And I'm also good with that too.
yeah.
I'm really actually very good with it. I have gotten to a point, and this is why I love our conversations, because I know that I can sit and talk with you and with the people that you and I have like cultivated in our world around this type of stuff. I can sit and sound like I have 500 opinions
Mm-hmm.
and have receipts for all of
All of
them,
them, because they're
for
all
all of the
right.
spectrum. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe
And
that.
I'm still held, I'm still held by it. So I can easily say, yeah, community is super important. And I can also still say that, but I know that I'm a hermit.
Mm-hmm.
And that like if I went and lived in an ashram on a mountaintop, I could successfully be alone for the rest of my life and die alone and be
Mm-hmm.
okay and be perfectly okay, knowing that there's like I would be the least alone feeling. I would not
Yeah.
be lonely. I'll make that distinction. Like I could be absolutely alone and not be lonely. And I think a lot of people still, and by a lot, I mean, just a majority anywhere, has a hard time with being alone because they get lonely.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't. I can successfully be alone and not be lonely. My own company is great.
Yeah.
She is spectacular.
She's
Like, and I'm
awesome.
good with it,
I love,
But I mean,
yeah, I know. I was, as you know, I was over in San Diego, caring for my dad, and he was a little bit annoyed with me that I came over. I surprised him, and he had an appointment on Friday, and then the next one wasn't until like Wednesday. And he's like, "Well, what are you gonna do?" And I was like, "Absolutely fucking nothing. I have no one to account for. Like, I don't have to feed anyone. I don't have to put anyone to bed. There's no teeth to be brushed. It's gonna be awesome." And he's like, "Oh yeah, you're like on vacation by yourself." It's like, yeah. And I used to, as a teenager, at 18 years old, I went to Australia by myself, and I had like no issues with that, right?
mhm,
And it was amazing. And the to kind of like pivot the conversation, because this was coming up in my head too, and what I'm realizing in my life, I know that I could be alone. I know that I can homeschool my boys. I know that I can do that. But what I'm seeing in my life and putting myself out into the areas of community that I go into, I'm like, "Oh, this is so expansive. Oh, look at all these triggers. Oh, look at how much quote unquote work I need to do to actually reach where I want to be going." Because in previous podcasts, we both agreed we're fucking done, right? We are not reincarnating. Well, I
not
probably need
here,
a little bit. Like, we're going somewhere else.
not
But
here, going somewhere else.
I think that's an important part of healing too, of like, I do believe you need to get out of the bar, right? If you're alcoholic, don't sit in the bar when you're in your first part of your journey. You've got to get
Yes.
out of where you were numbing, where you feel broken, where the hurt is, right? But then I do believe there's a point where you need to face those demons, because it actually truly shows you what you have moved through and what potentially is still, I don't know, for lack of better word, stuck inside of you. I know that's kind of overrated, this, or over talked about, these emotions being stuck, but and these feelings and all that, but that's just what it is. And
Yeah.
so really anyone for the most part can take themselves off to a sunny beach and be like, "I'm healed," and become this guru and stuff. But the truth
Yes.
is you put them back into the fire hole where they needed to heal from. And I see that there's this like fine balance of um like putting yourself out there more, and like the allure of just going, I'm gonna homestead. I'm gonna get me some chickens
Mm,
and some pigs, and I'm fucking done. Because that's the big thing right now. You see a lot of people on
yep.
social media doing that. It's like, okay, is that a form of running? And I can say that because I fucking ran a lot of my life, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but it gets exhausting because you
Yeah.
keep running, and you're like, okay, there does come a point where you have to sit and face what you came here to face. I mean, like we say, we choose this shit, apparently. So, like, we eventually have to deal with it.
Right. Yeah, I like that. I like um that question of, is it running? is it a form of running? And I think I know that this is something that like listeners are going to be like, they always say this every time they talk. All two truths. You're right. And I think we need to keep saying it because, it's important to recognize why one is doing something. Intent is everything, right? And if you can't be honest with yourself about why you're doing something, then are you truly aware? Like, and not aware of your choice, but like just aware. Like, are your eyes open? And I'm not saying that in like a spiritual, are you awake? Are you woke? No, 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 no. Like, forget that fucking shit. Like, just are you like conscious of what is going on? You know, I would say the most aware person is going to be the one that says, yeah, I'm fucking choosing to homestead and go off grid because I am wanting to get away from all of the negativity and bullshit. And then once they're there, being able to say, now that I've spent some time here and I've been able to like kind of reevaluate, I'm now actively choosing to stay in this spot, not because I want to get away from everything, but because I am building something here. I
Or they
am
choose to not do it because it's fucking hard. I think people don't
or
realize
that.
how hard homesteading is.
Yeah. Or that. Or they're just like, you know what? I realize that, you know what? It's, I whatever else the alternative is, it's just not something I want to do. You know,
Mhm.
but I think that until we get into something, we can't ever really be sure of why it is we're doing it. And I think if somebody asks you a question about something, anything, we're using this example of like going off the grid as just an example, like I said, but if somebody asks you, why is it that you're doing it? And you're sitting going, or you're sitting here getting defensive about it. And somebody
Mhm.
says, well, what about this? Like, could you possibly be doing this? And you're like, well, no, of course not. Then clearly there is something there,
Mhm.
which is why I'm very confident when somebody is like, well, Abigail, well, do you think that, you're having issues? I'm like, yeah, probably. Like, I'm willing to look at it.
Yeah.
Like, on some level, probably. I'm human. Like, and if I say nope, that's not something that I'm dealing with, somebody's gonna be like, well, you're just arrogant asshole who simply has no problems. Well, maybe that's true too. Maybe I don't have any problems.
And that's
Like,
okay.
that's okay. Like, I can easily think of myself, what is better? What is better for me to sit and think that I'm just this, fucked up, poor, pathetic, not worth anything. God help me, because I just can't like make my life work. And so I must get myself away from everything. Or is it better for me to be like, I am a goddess. I am sovereign in my being, and no, I don't have problems, and I'm good. Like, and
Mhm.
all of you can F off, right? Like, people, depending on where they are in their life and in their experience, are going to find problems with either. And there is no happy medium with it. I think that's the thing that people actively try to search for, is this like space where they're not arrogant and they're not an asshole, but they're also not in their victim, because if they're not one, then they have to be the other. They're
Yeah.
trying to find this space, and I'm like, you got to be okay with fluctuating between.
Well, yeah, we were having that conversation over on Telegram, right? You asked me what was the difference between being arrogant,
Yes.
and I was trying to look it up. What was it? Arrogant
I think probably arrogant and confident.
and confident. All right, guys, we are going to pretend like it's 1992 and we are going to pause this episode. It's to be continued. This is called anticipation. If you have not felt this in a really long time, you're welcome. I think it's a feeling that we all need to bring back into our lives. So make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. And thank you once again for tuning in, and looking forward to continuing this conversation on the next episode. Thank you so much again for joining us here on Choices. You can go ahead and leave a 5-star review because we're all friends here. But if you really want to move the conversation forward, please connect with us on our social media accounts, which you can find the links below. Have a beautiful week, and we'll see you next time here on Choices.